Hello, welcome to episode 263 of the Whatnauts review show, where every week we pick a story and we talk about it. This could be a movie, TV series, anime, manga, comic book, audio drama, all kinds of entertainment. We watch it, read it, listen to it, and then we come back here and talk about it. My name is Melissa Wilkinson, and I am joined, as always, by Kyle Springer.
Good morning, Melissa. How are you?
I'm doing okay. This is a recovery day for me because yesterday I
Right?
had my big Boppenheimer double feature and I was out of the house for like 12 straight hours.
Yeah. We did that on Friday. So thankfully we kind of had Saturday to recover. But it's just a recovery weekend. You know, that's kind of what you have to do. So we got this podcast, and then since we did go see both Barbie and Oppenheimer, Yo and I will be recording our thoughts on that a little bit later. So I'm excited.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a good day. Good day indeed. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I did.
Right, that's all either of us have been up
weekend,
to this weekend.
Right?
Do you have an exciting beverage? What's that can opening
super
sound?
Excited. It's a Monster Juice Pipeline Punch. It's pink, so I guess you could say it's in honor of Barbie. But no,
Cool.
Nothing exciting this time. So just something to wake me up as for a long day of podcasting.
Oh, yeah.
So
yes. Much in the way that a man frozen for 1,000 years in a cryogenic tube would need to be woken up.
Yeah, indeed, with chemicals.
Today we are talking about Futurama, a beloved show of mine, a show Kyle has seen some of, but has always wanted to know better. In honor of Futurama returning with new episodes to Hulu this week, we picked out, well, you let me pick all of them out.
Yes.
7 selected episodes of Futurama to discuss.
A curated sampler platter of Futurama. Yeah, I'm excited about this. Like you said, Futurama is a show that I've seen bits and pieces of here and there. I've always really enjoyed it. I just never truly watched it. But it's always been on my list of like, man, I need to watch that one day. It's like, this is a show that I've especially been more interested in rather than The Simpsons, which was also a big show when I was younger. But I've mentioned on some of our podcasts, The Simpsons always felt like my friends' older brothers show. And then when Futurama started, it's like, oh, it's like sci-fi, they're in the future, they're in space. Like that sounds more like my speed. And yeah, I remember like when it got started. I remember when it first got canceled and then brought back and then canceled again and then brought back, and then here we are. Third time's the charm.
We are now embarking on the 3rd reboot of Futurama.
Yep. So I'm excited. And it worked out that the 7 you picked, there was one of them that I knew the contents of, but beyond that, I hadn't seen these. So these were not the like random episodes that I caught on like Adult Swim or something way back in the day. So these were all new for me.
Nice. Futurama is the one sitcom that I think I've seen every single episode of. I have a spotty track record with sitcoms. A good sitcom can run for a very long time, and maybe it's like I came in season 3 and I stopped watching in season 5, but Futurama, beginning to end, this one I have covered. And I tried to pick a good selection of episodes. I've got some from the original Fox run, some from the Comedy Central run. I've got the more emotional ones, the really speculative ones that are just straight up jokes. I tried to give you a little bit of everything.
Yeah. I think it was a good mix. And they also did kind of go together cohesively, which was good. So yeah, I enjoyed it.
There is a little bit of a focus on the Fry and Leela romance here, because I've always found that very touching, and they are the source of some of the series' best episodes. It's a lot like Simpsons in that when the show, so known for its comedy, chooses to hit you in the heart, it hits hard. It is emotionally very effective. The episodes we covered were, with the episode numbers as they will appear to you on Hulu, which I believe is where both of us watched this. Season 3, episode 4, Parasites Lost. Season 3, episode 10, The Luck of the Fryish. Season 4, episode 1, Roswell That Ends Well. Season 5, episode 9, The Sting. Those are all from the original Fox run, and then from the Comedy Central run. Season 7, episode 7, The Late Phillip J. Fry. Season 7, episode 10, The Prisoner of Benda. And season 10, episode 13, Meanwhile, which is, up until now, the most recent series finale of Futurama.
Yeah, indeed. I knew about the contents of Roswell That Ends Well. That's just like one of the like cultural osmosis things that I heard. It's like, oh yeah, he's his own grandfather. Yes. How does that work? And yeah, I've just never watched that one until now. But yeah, I loved these a lot. I had a great time with them. I guess we can kind of jump right into like our plot synopsis of this. I don't know. I feel like most people at least have seen are like me, that had like maybe they've seen a handful of random stuff. They're familiar with the characters, but that's kind of it. They're just like, oh yeah, good show. Futurama.
The show starts with pizza delivery boy Phillip J. Fry delivering a pizza to a cryogenic freezing laboratory on New Year's Eve, 1999. He gets accidentally locked inside one of the cryogenic freezing tubes, and he's trapped in there for 1,000 years. So we have this 20th century man waking up in the year like 3000 and 2999. He's 1,000 years in the future. He finds his like great times a million nephew, who is the professor. He starts working for the professor's delivery company, Planet Express. He befriends a bending robot named Bender Bending Rodriguez. He falls for tough Captain Leela. They've got a number of other beloved crew members. Grad student Amy, Hermes, the accountant, Dr. Zoidberg, Scruffy, the janitor. These episodes I gave you are missing a lot of the fun recurring characters like Zap Brannigan and Kiff or Mom, but we accidentally got a good amount of Scruffy in here, and I am happy with that.
We did. It felt like we got a complete arc of Scruffy in here. Good stuff. Yeah, I think this was a well curated list. Like you said, a little bit of everything. It did focus on the romance. I just have good things to say with these. There's some classic sci-fi stories that are happening in here. The like, we need something that can get really, really small and go inside his body, to some time travel antics.
We have like 3 different time travel variants just in these 7 episodes.
Right. Yeah. And you'd think that they would learn not to do it again, considering how badly they messed it up the first time, and then the second time, and then the third time. But no, they continue just messing with the space-time continuum and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah. You got to keep moving forward. You got to try it all.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to think. I think of the ones that we watched, I have to say, I think my favorite was Meanwhile. Was the finale. I don't know. Like I did like the one about his brother. I like that one too. The luck of the Fryish. Those two I think
had to
really
give you
stood
that
out
one
to me.
I had to give you that one as a B-boy.
Oh yeah.
Like Kyle needs to see the episode with the breakdancing.
I could do that. No, I can't. I can't do any of that. But yeah, that I think those two, Luck of the Fryish and Meanwhile, were my favorite of this bunch, and they were kind of the more emotional of this this group here. And yeah, I think it's for exactly what you said. Like, it's a show that is focusing on the comedy, so when it does do these emotional stories, it's like, oh man, for a little half an hour story, that was incredible. That
yes,
was that was great. So yeah, nothing but good things to say.
And it is something that the show kept evolving and working on different angles of. Like, you've got the main Fry and Leela romance. You have Fry remembering like his time back on, I was going to say back on Earth. He's still on Earth. He's in New York now, but like sort of missing his family from 1,000 years ago. He's got this close friendship with Bender. As the show goes on, they do emotional episodes between all sorts of different sets of characters. There's a really good Bender and Hermes episode. There's a good Professor and Zoidberg episode. There's a good episode about the professor and his parents.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, like they don't just hit the same relationship over and over again.
That's true. The only one that I like, I don't even want to say vividly remember, but I just remember the one scene of Bender in his like pimp suit, like walking down this street. That's like the only thing that I remember from all of the Futurama I've watched over the years. That's it. That's all.
I don't remember specifically when that happened, but I'm sure it has been during his many antics.
Yeah. Indeed. So yeah, I would say right now is a perfect time to check out Futurama. Melissa, correct me if I'm wrong. Each time they did kind of reboot the series and they did like a new series finale, was there also was that first episode kind of a reintroduction?
I think there's a lot of continuity with it. I don't think there's ever been like a clean reboot. There's always an awareness of what has happened before. The characters always have a memory of what it is that they've done before.
But would you say it would be like a good jumping on point for new, like from when it first got canceled to the next time? Was that next spot like, hey, this is a good jumping on point?
Sure. I think the show has a great pilot. I do recommend starting at the very beginning. There are still great episodes back in like the original like 1999 2000 era. But after the first time it was canceled, then the show did 4 direct-to-DVD movies that were then aired on Comedy Central, like broken up into like 3 or 4 episodes of TV each. That's a great period also. I didn't include that in here, but the first of those movies, Bender's Big Score, that's also a series highlight for me.
Okay.
If it wasn't long enough to have been its own episode, I would have included Bender's Big Score. And then when the show picks back up again on Comedy Central, like there's really no wrong place to start with Futurama. I think you look at it and you get it pretty easily. Like they're in the future. This one guy's from the past. They all work together at this spaceship, at this delivery company that flies around on a spaceship. And that's how they get into different antics. Start anywhere. Turn on Comedy Central. It might still be on.
That's what I was kind of getting at, is now would be a great time to jump into Futurama.
Yeah.
You can kind of jump in anywhere you like, but with these new episodes coming out, I feel like you could almost just jump in right there, and you'd probably be okay. with the new stuff. So
it's a show that has been pretty consistent throughout its whole lifetime. I think taking both the sitcom approach and the speculative fiction, sci-fi, and like genre parody and societal commentary approach, like there's always fresh stuff for them to work with as the show goes on through time. There's great episodes in every single season. It's not like the show didn't come out of the gate strong or like weakened in the later like Comedy Central reboot seasons. Like it's pretty solid consistently.
Right. Yeah. I agree. Well, yeah, I say we take a quick break for some housekeeping. And then when we get back, we can dive into these episodes a little bit more in depth. So we will be right back. Here at the Whatnauts, we make multiple different shows, and a lot of hard work goes into making them, so we would love it if you check them all out. If you enjoy our shows, patreon.com/thewhatnauts is the best place to show your support. For just $1 a month, you can get early access to episodes, and at our $3 tier, a Patreon-exclusive podcast, The Pilots Club. You can even get a shout out and thank you on most of our shows at the $5 tier. And if you're one of our patrons already, thank you so much, it means the world to us. You can find out more information on our website, thewhatnauts.com, as well as your favorite podcasting platform of choice. When you type in The Whatnauts, all of our shows will pop up right there. Just don't forget to give us a nice rating and review if you like the shows. You can also find us on YouTube and Twitch for video versions of the shows, trailer reactions, and live streams. And lastly, we have merch. If you want to grab yourself a shirt or a hoodie or a mug or something else, head over to thewhatnauts.com/store to pick up some merch today. All right, we are back. Once again, a big shout out to all of our Patreon supporters. We love you a lot. We appreciate it. It means a ton. Over on the Pilots Club, our Patreon exclusive podcast, we got to watch Cable Girls this past month. It's a Netflix show that helped launch Netflix Spain, 1920s period piece, a little more soapy than we were expecting. But hey, we haven't done a soap opera on that show or on this show. So that was a nice surprise for us there. Melissa, do you want to give them a little sneak peek about what we will be covering on the Pilots Club this next month?
Our current ongoing monthly special is that we've been talking about the TV show The Good Place for one season a month. In fact, next week, we are talking about the fourth and final season of the show, concluding that series. So I thought to go along with that, we would watch a previous TV show featuring the star of Good Place, Kristen Bell in Veronica Mars.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. That one.
Who sounds like she could be a Futurama character.
Sure, yeah.
Detective Veronica Mars.
It's like, how have you survived 1,000 years into the future? Who knows? Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun. That's at our $3 tier and above on Patreon. So be sure to check that out, because that's a lot of fun. Right here on the review show, we already mentioned we will be wrapping up our coverage of The Good Place this next week. But this past week, in honor of Barbie, we went back and we watched the Brady Bunch movie, the 90s movie that took the Brady Bunch as you know them and just dragged and dropped them straight into the 90s. Yeah, that was also a lot of fun. I was not expecting to enjoy it as much as I did, but that's a good movie. It works. It works really well.
It was a successful experiment.
Yes, indeed. Over on the Captain's Log this past week, we talked about all sorts of things, including the moon landing, Duolingo, The Bear Season 2, Mountain Dew Overdrive, and a giant cheeseburger without the burger. Just a giant stack of cheese. Right.
We had a long discussion about what constitutes a burger. Can you put anything between two burger buns and call that burger?
we get up to some useless nonsense on the captain's log, and I love it. It's great. So we had a lot of fun over there. And last but not least, over on the reactor core, we will have all sorts of spoiler casts coming up here in the near future. We're continuing our coverage of Secret Invasion. We will be wrapping that up in the coming week. We're about to record our reactions to Barbenheimer, and yes, we are doing that all as one
together as
thing.
one.
Yes, so not a separate Barbie and Oppenheimer thing. It all just got
it's one episode
mix-matched.
That's about both movies and about our experiences doing both of them as a double feature and our encounters that day. I had many an encounter yesterday.
Good stuff indeed. And then a little bit further down the road from all of that, we will be talking about the Venture Bros movie. I think we'll save that for next weekend, just to give me some time to catch up. I've seen it all, but it's been a long time. We covered seasons 1 through 6, 7?
1 through 7.
All of them, here on the review show years ago.
3 years ago.
Yeah, and because it's been a while, I need a refresher. And Melissa, you are also waiting on your physical copy, which you might already have.
It's the movie came out on VOD on Friday, which I've already bought and watched. And then I also pre-ordered the physical media release, which comes out on Tuesday. So we're delaying this a week so I can get that disc, look at the bonus features, listen to the commentary, and come to this with perhaps a bit more insight.
Indeed. It'll be good. So look forward to all of that stuff. But that is about it for housekeeping right here, right now. So let's get into spoilers for Futurama. Bam. Okay. Do you want to just go down the list here?
Yeah.
Let's start with Parasites Lost. Melissa, talk to me about Parasites Lost.
I picked this one because I saw a list of episode titles for the new season on Hulu, and there's one called Parasites Found. So I thought it would be pertinent for us to revisit this episode. And this is one that has really stuck in my head. It is one of the earlier episodes. I was probably a preteen when I saw this. And it's another one of it's mostly a comedy episode that like hits you with the emotion towards the end, which I guess is the format of most of these episodes.
Right.
There's Fry eats a truck stop sandwich. This like disgusting egg salad truck stop sandwich.
I was gonna say an egg salad truck stop sandwich from a like not vending machine, but like a machine in the bathroom.
Right. The things that like I know where you can get pads and tampons and Bonnie Bell lip gloss. I don't know what they contain in a men's room, but in this episode you can get an egg salad sandwich in one of those things. And the fact that like the sandwich is so old that there is a tomato slice that has become this like hard black disc, and they're like, what's that cracker thing? And he's like, it's a tomato, I think. Like that's so specifically gross that I've never forgotten it.
Just this hardened black tomato.
That's grosser than anything they do inside Fry's body. So like he eats this old sandwich, he gets this worm infestation that starts making him behave different. And they do the incredible the Fantastic Voyage thing where they you think they're going to shrink down and go inside his body, but instead they're wearing VR suits. There's a real tiny ship that goes inside his body, but the crew has not made themselves tiny. They're just in the other room in a VR helmet.
Which I think is actually like an interesting twist on that. Like why do anything to like actually experiment and physically change your body when you have the technology to just build these like microscopic robots of yourself? Why not? I thought that was a good twist on the classic. We need to get small and go inside his body. So good stuff there. But yeah, the worms do make him behave differently in this, not in a like destructive way though. He's actually smarter. Like
yeah, it's
he's
kind
not
of
this
a flowers for
airhead.
Algernon thing.
Yeah.
Or that episode of The Simpsons where Homer finds out he's had a crayon stuck up his nose his whole life, and then he gets it removed and he becomes smarter, and then Lisa can actually relate with him.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Ooh, excuse me. Ooh, I'm choking and dying. No,
you're also full of worms.
Right. Yes, I am also full of worms thanks to some chemicals that I'm having here to drink. No, yeah, I thought that it was a good twist because yeah, it also then plays into his love life with Leela, who I've never realized it, but I know the voice actor of her character. I like she has such an iconic voice, and I was like, I know that from somewhere. And then I looked her up, and I was like, okay, she's in kind of everything. And then I saw her picture. I was like, oh, in Lost, I know her as John Locke's like girlfriend,
Helen. Right.
Helen, yeah, exactly.
Out of Katie Seagal's many credits, I'm happy you thought of Helen.
Shit like is not mentioned on her paragraph of this is what she's known for. It's all like all these extra stuff. Don't mention Lost at all. I'm just like, oh, Lost. I see. Okay. Yeah. But it like I've known her voice for so long, but since I just never truly like really got into Futurama, I never really made that connection of like I know her from somewhere else. So I was thankful that I finally put that together.
Good.
Because yeah, she's in all sorts of stuff.
Married with children, famously.
Yeah. Indeed. But yeah, the worms kind of play into the romance that her and Fry have, and they start to connect on a deeper level here, which is, I think, this arc that we have in these 7 episodes of the romance. I think this is a good place to start because it feels like they have crushes on each other, but it is just it feels like when you try and stick a USB in the computer, but you have it in upside down. It's like I know it wants to go in there, but it's just it's not getting in there, right?
Fry has always had a crush on Leela, and it has been the journey of the show that she's like, yeah, he's sweet, but he's like kind of dumb. Like she's continually frustrated with him. Yeah. But as the show goes on, I don't remember exactly what the turning point was, but they are like you see in like the Comedy Central seasons we were watching in the last 3 episodes, like they are a couple then. So they're not stuck in like sitcom purgatory where the relationship never changes.
Right. Yeah. Which I think is a good thing. I like the passage of time in this, especially since they do so much with time travel. I think having stuff like that is great for change, especially as this show has been rebooted, or not even rebooted, but like relaunched multiple times. That's always when I was in college and I was writing academic papers in my English class on comics and stuff like that. Some of the papers that I came across in my research was stuff on Superman and this idea that the character never really changes. And because if you start to make him change and he does actually get married to Lois and that marriage sticks and they do actually have kids and so on and so forth, that means at some point you're going to have to stop the character. because he will
Yeah.
cease to be. He will die of old age. Who knows what? Like, you will have to come up with an end for that character. But if you keep him kind of still in this, like, will they, won't they, maybe they get married for a little bit, but then like super villain Lex Luthor erased the minds of the whole world, right?
Yeah.
And it's just this repeating cycle. Then things can kind of stay the same, and no matter who you are, no matter what time period you live in, you can still make and write that character and do your own story. And it's just this kind of on and on and on, this infinite, like, comics can just continue on. You can jump in wherever you want, right? It won't really matter because they're just stuck right in this one time period. And it's just this interesting struggle. But I think because this show is being relaunched multiple times, I think having the characters kind of progress in this way of, it started as a crush, then there's some will they, won't they, then maybe there's some time travel antics, but by the end, yeah, they are together, and what we get in meanwhile at the end here is fantastic. It is a great look on, yeah, these two do really love each other. It may not have always been that way, but they grew to love one another, and they have a great time just being by themselves. So yeah, good stuff. Good stuff with that.
The key emotional part of Parasites Lost is that while the worms are inside Fry's body, making him more intelligent and more intuitive, he's able to master this incredibly difficult instrument called a holophoner that looks like a clarinet, but when you play it, it creates this like visual projection. And he plays the song that's like him and Leela like dancing across the stars, across all these planets. It's so beautiful and so like seductive to her. But then at the end, when he takes the worms out of his body and he's just dumb old Fry again, he goes back to the drawing board. The final scene in the episode is he picks up this book called My First Holophoner, and he tries to play, and he makes this like misshapen blob that slowly develops the like one eye and like purple ponytail of Leela. Like he never stops trying to do something special for her. That's such a great image.
Yeah. And then even before he makes that, when he does the Frankenstein one, is that right? Does he like somehow
immediately after he gets the worms out of his body, he's like, let me play for you. And she's like, no, I'm still seduced from before. I'm good. And he picks up the holophoner and it makes this like gross groaning Frankenstein and kills the mood.
Which is, I mean, a talent on its own. Right? To be like, man,
that's a good Frankenstein.
Frankenstein. Yeah. How did you do that? It's alive. God. Yeah. I like the idea that it is still, it's a riff on the like boy picks up a guitar and makes a song, but it is this like futuristic sci-fi instrument that produces an image of what the player is thinking or dreaming or imagining, which is interesting. That's kind of cool. I don't have, what's the name of the one with like the lights and you stick your hand in?
A theremin.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of that. Like that
lights,
is like,
it's like vibrations.
Right. That is the most like sci-fi musical instrument that I know of, and so I feel like you could be like, hey, Max Rebo or whatever your name is from Star Wars, right? Yeah, you could give him that and the hologram phone
and the modal
thingy.
nodes, what they play kind of looks like a holophoner.
Exactly. I think that fits, and it's just nice. It's a nice way to interpret the like, hey, here's what I envision for you and me, right?
But you ready to move on to the next one?
I was just gonna say they like at the end, like Fry kind of realizes that Leela is is falling
Exactly, yes.
for this more intelligent version of him, and he's realizing that's not really him, it's the worms inside him, and she like that's not the best representation of
Yeah.
him, and so he fights him and gets him out and goes back to his plain old dumb self, and he's just
Right,
like,
which is a
all right,
very
this is me.
noble thing to do, to like change yourself so that you're more authentic, to revert yourself back to your most authentic self, even if it means you're losing progress in this relationship you want, because you know that's the bad way to go about it, even if it's nothing you did intentionally.
Right,
He's
it's
like he knew
very
eating this
mature.
old sandwich would make Leela fall in love with him. Yeah, like that is something that makes Philip J. Fry so effective to me as a protagonist, is that he's such a dumbass, but he does have a good heart. He is very loyal, and he really does want the best for himself and those around him.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. Let's move on to the second one here. The luck of the Fryish.
In this episode, Fry just hits a series of bad luck, and he remembers when he was a kid, he found a 7-leaf clover that was like his good luck charm. And his older brother, Yancey, kept trying to take it from him. We see Fry and Yancey through these different points in their life when, like, when he's first born and Yancey's like, well, his name's Philip. I want to be called Philip. I don't want to be Yancey. Call me Philip. Like, he's just always trying to take stuff away from Fry. And Fry like goes back to the remnants of what used to be his old house, and where he's like, I know I put the 7-leaf clover here, and he can't find it. And he's like, my brother stole it. And then in the ruins of old New York, where they've built new New York, the future city on top of it, he finds a statue of what looks like his brother, labeled, here's Philip J. Fry, the first man to walk on Mars. And he's like, I'm Philip J. Fry. I wanted to walk on Mars.
Yeah, he gets to see all these accomplishments that it like he was like, that's supposed to be me, right? Like how dare you steal my clover and then go live this full life that I wanted.
Yes.
And it all comes down to, at the end, you find out that that's not actually what happened. The brother did find the clover and did use it for a little while, but he kind of at least moved on from the clover, but he always missed his brother, who he just didn't really know what happened to him.
Yeah.
And his brother Yancey ends up naming his kid after his brother. So it's not his brother that did all of these accomplishments, but his nephew. And it is just this sweet, touching turn of events that is this like, no, you weren't forgotten. Like, you weren't this nobody. Like, you were impactful, and you were loved, and we missed you. Which is, I think, a really special moment for him to write, like, being 1,000-something years in the future, basically knowing no one, and just to see, like, hey, here's a monument basically to your memory, and it's just like, oh, this is so sweet. I love it.
They go to Orbiting Meadows, which is a intergalactic cemetery, and their plan is to grave rob the 7-leaf clover from Yancey's body. But when they get there, they see the statue, and Fry like uncovers like the plants or whatever that are at the base of the statue of who looks like his brother, and he sees that it fully says, "Here lies Philip J. Fry, named for his uncle to carry on his spirit." And I just get so teary just thinking of that. And then you see Fry just like collapsed there by this memorial statue. Like, he's gotten it all wrong. He's been thinking of his brother wrong for all these years. And he's like, I'll leave it there. Like, this belongs to my nephew, and I'm happy that he had that.
Good stuff. Indeed.
It's so touching, but there's also so many great jokes in this episode.
one of my favorite jokes of all seven that you gave me here is when he's like, let's go back to my old house. And they get there and it is run down. It's destroyed. It looks terrible. And he looks at it and goes, man, it hasn't changed a bit. And then it like smash cuts to like to in the past, and it looks the exact same. It's run down. It's broken. It's just like, that was so good. It was so dumb. House
he
looked
hid
the
the
same.
7-leaf clover in a vinyl record for the soundtrack to The Breakfast Club, and young Fry is holding it, and he's like, man, I can't wait until I'm old enough to feel ways about stuff.
Right, yeah.
And at the beginning of the episode, in the future, like everybody's going to this horse race, and this is the streak of bad luck that sets Fry on this mission, is that he loses all these bets. And at one point he asks Leela to give him a kiss for good luck, and she kisses him on the cheek, and he says, no, I meant tongue luck.
Right, yeah. Oh, Fry, he's trying. He's trying. Yeah, I think this is an interesting one because you also get to explore the locations that they're in. Too, and I like that. Something that I think that, again, I don't know much about since I was never really a fan of, but something I've kind of seen from the outside is that it seems like people have a really good idea of what Springfield looks like for the Simpsons, and like where everything is in relation to each other. And that's really, really neat. And I haven't seen enough of Futurama to know if that's really the case for the world they live in, but to see this like orbiting graveyard, which I think we see again later in one of these episodes,
you see it again.
But we don't actually go there.
There are recurring set pieces. Like I think in the final episode, you see instead of Madison Square Garden, it's Madison Cube Garden. They go there several times throughout the show.
Yeah, like I like stuff like that. I like getting to explore this undercity that is it's not working, but there's still people that live there, and they're all these like mutated monsters and stuff like that. It's just it's interesting to get to explore that, and then like we do later on with the fancy restaurant that's in the cave. Like that whole thing was neat, and then they they go in the future and they go in the past, and the cave is still there. It's just it's neat to get to explore that space and have it feel like an actual space. That not only you can relate to, but you can see in the background of other pieces and stuff like that. It's just like, oh, okay, I remember that place. That back in that episode, they did this thing over there, and it fills out that world. So I enjoyed that a lot.
I wanted to mention something about the underground mutants. When we first meet Leela, she grew up in an orphanage and she never knew her parents. And being a Cyclops with her one big eye, nobody else looks like her. And she believed her whole life, I must be an alien. I don't know what planet I'm from. And she operates under that assumption for several seasons until we find out she's not an alien. She is a mutated human. Her parents are from that underground mutant civilization, and they sent their baby up to the above world with the hopes that she may have a better life.
I gotcha. That's cool.
Yeah. So there's another piece of something that truly does develop as the show goes on, and then you meet her parents. You see them briefly in Meanwhile. They bring them up to the wedding. Like her dad's got like a vertical mouth, and her mom has like tentacles for arms.
Good stuff. Yeah. I think the emotional aspect of this one really works because it's not a downer that the episode ends on, but it is this like gut punch of this like solemn, like, oh, I had everything wrong here. But it's also kind of cool that, like, hey, he named his son after me. Like, huh? Like, he just has to sit with that for a bit.
We weren't enemies after all. Yes.
It was good. It was good indeed.
And speaking of Fry's family, our next episode is Roswell that ends well, where Fry, Leela, Bender, the professor, and Dr. Zoidberg are viewing some special, like, solar eclipse out there in the Planet Express ship floating in space. And Fry puts a Jiffy Pop bag in the microwave. So he microwaves metal, and that so that, like, makes the microwave blow up and interact with these cosmic rays. And it's some sort of freak event that sends them back in time to Roswell for the Roswell incident. And they realize the Roswell incident was us. The spaceship that they think they found is parts of Bender. The alien they think they found is Zoidberg.
The alien, yeah.
and Fry's like, my grandpa was like stationed at an army base around here. I can go meet him. And the episode is him trying to prevent his grandfather from dying because he keeps walking into fatal events. And Fry doesn't want himself to disappear from the timeline.
Or even, so like, not so fatal events. The first time we see him, he like tackles him out of the road, be like, watch out, you're about to get run over.
Yeah.
And then we see the car that's on the road, and it's like way back behind. It turns at like another street. It's nowhere near him. He was in zero danger. He's just like, watch out.
And then we find out that when his grandpa does die, Fry realizes, then who's my grandpa? And he realizes it must be him. Like, he accidentally sleeps with his grandma.
With my grandpa.
Right, because he realizes if my grandpa's dead, you must, he's like, maybe I have the wrong people. Maybe this isn't my grandma after all. And he sleeps with her, and then he realizes it was her, and he is his own grandfather.
Yeah, this was the one that I knew the contents of, or like the ramifications of, but also had not seen this one. This is like, if you know anything about Futurama, you probably know that he's his own grandfather. And so, yeah, it was nice to finally get to see this one, because like once they time traveled and he started to mention his grandfather, I was like, oh, I bet this is the one where he finds out that, so yeah, I enjoyed this one a lot. I like the like, I feel like this was also kind of a trope of some sci-fi time travel stuff where not the grandfather paradox stuff, but the like, it turns out we were the event, like the famous event that I like stuff like that. That's always interesting to watch. And they make it out. They escape, but then he's just haunted with the knowledge that is he is his own grandfather.
Right. And I like the horror of seeing his grandfather get involved in all these dangerous situations, from like possibly being run over by a car, falling on a bayonet. Just like, one of his duties is like kitchen duty. He's like, I've been working with raw chicken. Yum, finger licking good. Like, everything down to food poisoning could kill this man before he is able to sire Fry's father. So Fry's trying to stop all that from happening. At one point, he's talking to his grandfather. Like, they go to the diner where the woman who is supposedly his grandma works. And Fry's grandpa says, yeah, she's my sweetheart, but do you ever think you're just going with girls because you're supposed to? And the joke being, what if this man is gay? And then Fry's like, you can't be right now. You can't be, because I need you to have sex with her and make my dad so that I exist. And I think the story does a good job of it not being homophobic. Just please, there cannot be a single obstacle to me being born.
I need to exist, please.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that one is a blast. I had fun with that one. It's also neat to see these very like futuristic sci-fi characters then interact with things from the past when they do all of these time travel antics. To
Yes.
just see Zoidberg in the midst of all this stuff and just not understand that like he looks different to them, like they haven't discovered aliens yet. It just hasn't clicked with him, and so he's just being himself, being like, hello there. God, I can't do a Zoidberg. Right, but he's just trying to be like, what should we talk about today? Right.
Like he gets kidnapped, or he gets like captured by all these secret agents, and he's like, what are we doing after this? I'm up for anything.
Right, yeah. It's almost sexual for him in a weird way.
He just wants a friend. That is the character of Zoidberg, is that he's perpetually like a gross, lonely weirdo who desperately wants a friend.
Which is then why down the road when he switches bodies with Fry, he's always like, oh boy, I have a friend with Bender, right? And like he tries to like sidestep into the kitchen and be like, I'll make some food or something, right? Like that's what friends do.
Yes, let's go to the apartment where we live together every day.
Exactly. Yeah, so he's just oblivious as to what is happening. Fry is trying to make things go the way he thinks they should go, and then he's the one that just messes everything up. And then the professor just kind of being there. I felt like I don't want to say he felt useless in that episode, but he felt more like the parent in the sense of just like, oh no, everything is going wrong. What do I do? How do I get everyone back here?
That's often his role. Yeah, as the leader, as the person he's both gets them into trouble and tries to keep them in line. With my experiment went wrong, but never mind that. You guys need to stop screwing up. Listen to what I'm telling you.
Indeed. Yeah, good stuff with that one. On to the next.
The Sting. The Sting is, I think, my personal favorite episode of the series. I think this one is so sweet. It's funny and it's kind of eerie in like a twisty little Twilight Zone way.
Yeah. Talk to me.
In this one, the crew has to go on a mission to a planet of these giant bees who like make this special honey. And the professor gives them this mission, like, you guys just need to go on this ordinary mission to collect ordinary honey. And they're like, well, that doesn't sound so hard. And then he says, this is no ordinary honey. It's like all these death bees that'll attack you. So Fry and Leela and Bender go up there. They try and get the honey. And a giant bee like goes to sting Leela. And Fry jumps in front of her and says, you want her? You're going to have to go through me. And then, like, Leela wakes up after she thinks she's been stung. She's like, oh, I just got poked. The stinger went right through Fry. Fry is dead. And the episode is her dealing with the fact that Fry is dead. And then she has these dreams where he's still alive and he's still talking to her. And she's like, these mean something. I think he's really not dead. Like, I think we buried a living body or something like that. Yeah. So she's so paranoid. She's trying to figure out what's real, what really happened. Like Fry comes to her in a dream and is like, I left a special gift for you in my locker. I didn't get a chance to give it to you before we went on that mission. And she like goes to his locker and Bender has already sold everything. And he's like, nope, got rid of everything. Nothing left. Just this. And he like pulls the thing out of his like abdomen storage container. And it's like exactly the thing Fry in the dream told Leela was going to be there. She's like, see, how could I know this? He must be alive. He had to tell me that for me to know this. And they're like, no, he probably told you before, and in your grief you forgot, and now you just remembered and you think it's new information. Yeah. He's dead, Leela. He's dead. And she's just having this mental breakdown. And then eventually realize all the time, like Fry is like talking to her in this like dream state. And at the end of the episode, you realize the stinger went through Fry. He got none of the poison. it did hit Leela. Leela has been poisoned, but whatever this like bee venom is, she's in a coma in the hospital. She wakes up and Fry's been at her bedside talking to her the whole time. Like,
Yeah.
I need you to wake up because you're injured here in our real life and you are in a coma.
Yeah. It almost feels like the turning point for Layla to kind of realize that she is in love with him.
Yeah.
It to her in her fever dream, whatever it might be, seems more like you don't know what you've got until it's gone kind of thing. But yeah, it is her subconscious being like, no matter what happened, like, hey, you're thinking about him. Like, he's the one that saved you. He's always been there. He is kind of sweet. It's kind of dumb, but he's always been there, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, it felt like that middle turning point of just like, I think you do actually like him. But yeah, I thought this one was a good one because I feel like every sitcom always needs to have a good like drug trip episode, or like dream sequence episode, just for the fun of the like weird things you can do and the like what's real, what's not. Do you want to play with the like fan expectations of certain relationships or certain things that they have their like head cannons with. So yeah, I thought this one was good, and I think another example of just how sweet Fry is and how loyal he is to just be there constantly and not talk. And it ends with them being like, you need a shower. It's like, yeah, you too.
I love that joke. I think it is truly so sweet that he's been there by her side the entire time. Again, like to the detriment of his own self-care. Sort of the single-minded, almost dumbness of Fry is present in there. And I love that it's the fact that both of them smell. That if you've been waiting by somebody's bedside for 2 weeks while she's in a coma, and if you've been in a coma for 2 weeks, like maybe you've been sponge bathed, but like both of you, your hygiene regimens have suffered.
Or because he was there, the nurses couldn't get in to do the sponge bath thing, right? He's like, no, I will not leave her.
I like that it's both of them. The even-handedness of that joke is such a nice symbol for like what a relationship needs to be. Like, you're in it together, all things are equal.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a really interesting moment in this episode where it comes back from a commercial break and Bender is just on fire, and then everybody else in the crew rushes in with a fire extinguisher to like extinguish the fire. Then he's like, phew. And then he pulls like another cigar and lighter out of his chest compartment and like lights up again. Like, it's so abrupt. It's so surreal in the context of everything dreamy that's happening in that episode. I really like that moment. It's just another thing that makes everything sort of unnerving here. I think this episode does a great job of you're an audience member watching a sitcom. Of course, you believe the main character isn't dead, but you don't know exactly what's happening. You can tell something's wrong, but it's not exactly clear on exactly what it is. I think the show, or maybe it's because I saw this episode when I was pretty young and I can't go back to my mindset. Like, if I was watching this for the first time now, maybe I could catch on better to what the game is. But when I was like 12 or 13, I couldn't. So it's really like, I'm in this with Leela. I don't know what's happening.
I think on top of all of that, there's some interesting lore in this. I don't know if the show explores or not, but the idea that the professor had a crew before them, and
I think that has come up in other contexts. One line that actually really means something is when they are having that funeral ceremony for Fry, and Amy's trying to comfort Leela and pats her on the shoulder and says, he's walking on sunshine now.
Yeah.
Do you know the episode about the dog?
I don't think so.
Oh, there's an episode called Jurassic Bark that is like infamously tragic, where there's some like old New York archaeologists that find like remnants of the society where Fry lived, and they find
Uh-huh.
this like petrified fossilized dog. And Fry's like, that was my dog. I like adopted this like street dog. He was my buddy. And like every day the dog would like wait outside the pizza shop where he worked, and he would go out on his deliveries and come back and the dog would be there. And there's a scene of like him biking along delivering pizzas with the dog trotting behind him, and they're he's singing Walking on Sunshine, the dog's kind of barking along. And then the episode ends with Fry's going to like use some machine to like resurrect his fossilized dog. And he's like, you know what? I was with this dog for such a short amount of time. He probably had a great life after I left, after I got frozen. I'm going to let him live with those memories. Like, he probably belonged to somebody else. Like, maybe this isn't my dog anymore. And then we see a flashback of that dog waiting outside the pizza shop for years for a Fry that never came home.
Yeah. That's so sad.
It is heartbreaking. Right. It's like one of the most infamous episodes of Futurama. And it's very notable. But I'm like, that's maybe like too sad to like throw into the selection. Like, that's an episode that almost hits you too hard. Like, there's nothing redemptive about that episode. I think maybe they do redeem it in some way in one of the later seasons. Like, they're all their time travel mishaps. I think they do correct it so that the dog, his name's Seymour Butts. He's named after a prank call. That Seymour does get or maybe his name's Seymour Asses. Little Seymour does get a better ending at some point, I think. But anyway, the line about he's walking on sunshine now is a direct tie to that episode.
I gotcha.
So there's a lot of continuity here in Futurama that if you watch the whole thing, you see all these different connection points.
Right.
But if you haven't seen it, like, that line still plays.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of took that as like maybe it was one of his favorite songs, or like there was an episode between him and Layla on a date or something like that, where that song is somehow involved, or who knows what. But yeah, I like that line did stand out. But yeah, there's just some interesting tidbits in there about the past, and and we had like, there was a crew before us and they all died on this mission, like trying to get the honey. They find the like black box recording, and it's them all like screaming in pain as they're being stung by all of these killer bees.
One final bit in this episode is that during that funeral scene, Bender's crying and saying, I always used to shout, kill all humans, which is one of his catchphrases. Kill all humans, destroy all humans, stuff a robot says. It's like, I always used to say kill all humans, but then I'd whisper, except one. Fry was that one. Which is very sweet and very true. Like, they don't hit on it often, but those two do have a very deep bond with each other, Fry and Bender. And I like that later it's recontextualized as this was all in Leela's mind. I think it's nice that their bond is so deep that Leela sees it and knows not just how sad she would be, but like how sad Bender would be if Fry wasn't there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Good stuff. Let's move on
now
to the next one.
We move on to the Comedy Central era with the Late Phillip J. Fry, an episode where the professor builds a time machine that only goes forward. And he makes Fry and Bender test it with him. And Fry is like supposed to get out the door and go to meet Leela for a birthday dinner because he was late and like missed the whole thing for taking her out to lunch. And he's like, I'll make it right. Let me take you out to dinner tonight. And then he gets wrapped up in testing this experiment. And the time machine that is only supposed to go forward like a minute or two at a time to test it. It accidentally goes forward decades into the future. And the professor's like, I don't know how to make a backwards time machine. We just have to keep going forward until some future civilization does figure out how to make a backwards time machine.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, that was an interesting one to just see them go further and further in the future, and they're both resign to that fate as well as they're like them just being more and more like, I don't want to be here stuck with you three, right? Or like you two.
Yeah.
And because yeah, they end up getting to a future that does have a backwards time machine, but because they didn't let Bender stay
Right.
in the part of the future that was like a bunch of like sexy robots or what have you. He's now upset and is like, well, if I can't have what I want, then you can't have what you want. So he hits the thing that they go even further in the
So petty.
in the future. And yeah, and the next time they stop, they're like, they've seen like the heat death of the universe, and they're just like, well, now we're stuck.
Yes.
So this is it. We just have to like hit the forward button until we die of starvation, I guess, right?
Who knows? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's when they discover it's all a big loop, that after a bit, it all sucks into a black hole and then a new Big Bang, right? And then they're just like, oh, this is perfect. We can get there right on time then. Like it never happened. And they finally get there. I think it happens twice. They go in a big loop
the
twice.
First time, they're seconds away from getting back to the time when they left, and like the professor accidentally like jerks the thing wrong, and they have to do another loop around. And on the second loop, he like stops and kills Hitler, and on the third loop, he's like, "Don't slow down. I'll just shoot Hitler out the window."
And then he misses and kills someone else.
Eleanor
I forget
Roosevelt.
who. Right? Yeah. Which both of those seem to have no impact on the history. Like they just
that was just jokes.
Yeah. But then they did the thing where they got back to the right time, but the universe was like 10 feet lower than where they were, so like the other characters were right below them, and then the ship that they're on just smashes them and kills them. So they're like, oh, perfect. So we don't have to worry about a paradox,
loop.
right? Yeah, closed loop. Which just this is one that makes me think about like what exactly is the timeline for Futurama, because you do have the like, okay, he's his own grandfather, but this one also then like went through like 2 or 3 cycles of what the universe actually is, and then he killed himself in this one. So is he really the like what's happening? It's so complicated.
It picks and chooses its battles with logic. Don't worry about the timeline. But in the next episode, we talk about where there's complicated math. That is real math that they did. All the Harvard grads that work on this show trying to figure out this fake sci-fi problem.
Yeah, indeed. I just thought that it was an interesting thing that they like, okay, he did this time loop here, but then there's this loop here, so does that erase that one? I guess, and it's just this big old jumbled mess of, you know what, who cares?
The important part of the story is that because he gets roped into testing this experiment that the professor says is only going to take a minute, and then he gets stuck in the future, Fry misses Leela's birthday dinner. And earlier that night, Bender was like, guys, hedonism bot is finally settling down, but he's having one last rager. And Fry's like, oh boy, I'd love to go. But he's like, I want to go, but no, I agreed. I will take Leela to dinner.
Yeah.
And so later when he doesn't show up and there's a news report that everything went wrong, that there was some huge explosion or disaster at Hedonism Bot's bachelor party, he's like, I looked around and there were piles of bodies everywhere. And then there was the explosion. I love Hedonism Bot. She believes Fry's dead. Like he went to that party and he died. And she just, and like there's no Professor or Bender either. Like they all went and they all died. So you see the rest of Planet Express kind of try and survive in its absence. And then Leela as captain takes over the business and it thrives. And years from now, she ends up marrying Cubert. Cubert is the professor's clone of himself. That's that little boy. I no longer remember if he meant to make a like kid clone of himself or if he was trying to make an identical clone and it accidentally came out a kid. I forget if it's intentional within the story that he made a like 10-year-old boy, but that's who that is. And so that's why she kind of starts to look at him that way years later when he's an adult, because he is related to Fry.
Has the same haircut,
so you see her, right. You see her trying to replicate, either turn her back in romance altogether or replicate what she had with Fry. And while he's in the ship, while he's in the time machine, Fry's got this video greeting card that he's recording a birthday message for Leela on. And then like the ship hits some sort of time glitch. The card flies out the window and it flies into like through a time hole to the exact time when Leela is. So Leela gets this card and realizes, much like Luck of the Fryish, I've been mad at him for years because of something that wasn't his fault. He never meant to skip out on me. He didn't die. He got lost in time. He's stuck in the future somewhere. And so she goes to the cavern on the green restaurant, takes her laser gun, writes a message to him in the cavern, knowing that it'll like, the water will drip and like form stalagmites or stalagmites, who knows, in the ground, that in the future, if he comes there, he could see it.
I think stalagmites, so sweet. Because stalactites have to hold on tight to the ceiling so that they don't fall. I think.
Floor rocks. She's making floor rocks.
She's making floor rocks.
Which, when you think about it, she had to write that message backwards so that he can read it, which is such skill. Leela's so competent. I love that Leela's always so strong and so tough. Right? She's got so many skills, Leela. So in the future, he finds that message. I love the permanence of that message. I love that recurring theme in Futurama about these little pieces of emotion and of human connection that can survive for centuries against war and destruction and the rages of time. One simple love letter from one person to another can last that long. And you always have another chance to go back and like make up for your mistakes. I think this episode's very sweet, and I really like its specific take on time travel. You have to keep going forward until somebody else invents a way to go back.
Right. I was watching another show recently that did a similar thing about like leaving a message for someone at a certain time. Not the same situation. It's not like a heartfelt romantic message or anything like that, but there's two characters who are trapped in this building and there's a bunch of people after them, all with guns and stuff like that, but they know that this building is still here in the future timeline, and so they write this message that they are trapped in the building at this specific time, so send someone back here to help us. And they don't know if it'll work or not, but that's the thing. They like write this message on the wall, and yes, someone comes and saves them, and it's just like, oh, that's so cool. But yeah, here we have the heartfelt romantic version. So good stuff with that.
This episode also has one of my favorite jokes, which is when Fry gets the video greeting card and Amy is explaining to him how it works. Like, yeah, you just record a nude video message to give to somebody. And he says, does it have to be nude? She's like, huh, that never occurred to me.
Great. I love it.
I love it so much.
Wait, so you have to put clothes on to record this message? The instructions didn't say that.
Amy is such a rich, multifaceted character, and I love how much they get out of Amy in The Prisoner of Benda, which is the next episode we're going to talk about, which is a body switch episode. Yeah. You get to see Bender in Amy's body, and then you get to see a robo janitorial bucket in Amy's body, and just how much the show can like just on the animation alone, like even if you put this on mute, you could tell that character is not that character. Somebody else is inhabiting them. That
Right, yeah.
is Leela and the professor's body.
Yeah, let's move on to that one then. This is the one that has this whole made up math.
Yes.
Harem, right? All right, so explain this. So you've mentioned this to me in the past, that there was an episode of Futurama that invented a brand new math theorem equation. I don't know exactly what this is, but yes.
I don't know math. I don't know what that means. I don't know how many theorems there are, if it is a big idea to make a new theorem, but it sure sounds impressive. And that is part of the pedigree of the show. Same thing with this and Simpsons. Even going back to like National Lampoon is from Harvard. There's this connection between real smarty brains and writing like really incredible comedy. There's a lot of Harvard grads on Simpsons and on Futurama. Like I think Futurama's had like actual like PhDs working on it in different capacities. There's so much real knowledge here that I find so impressive. And in this episode, the professor and Amy, who is his like lab assistant, they have made a mind switching machine. So they switch bodies with each other, bodies, minds, whatever. And then they are like, this isn't working. Let's switch back. And they can't switch back. After you've made a switch, you can't switch between that same body anymore. So they're like, we need a third blank body. Like we need some third party to come in here. So like if we can't switch, I can switch to this person and then they can switch to you. But then we need somebody else because then you can switch back to me. And like that's how it goes, is that people keep switching bodies with each other and they can't switch back. So they have to bring in somebody else. They have to keep adding people and robots and aliens to this list of people. And then at the end, the Harlem Globetrotters come in to do some math and figure out, no, we can get this done with only 2 extra bodies. And that's us, these 2 Harlem Globetrotter players. Which
because of course that's what the Harlem Globetrotters do. Math.
Yes. Like
great.
They did the sort of classic like Gilligan's Island Scooby-Doo Harlem Globetrotters, what are you doing here sort of episode ages ago, where it was established that the Harlem Globetrotters are all like geniuses.
Amazing.
They play basketball
so
for
good.
fun. There are frequently times when it's like they call in a council of scientists and Harlem Globetrotters are there. I'm like, this must be so random to you just watching this episode if you don't know that was one of the running bits of lore in the series. That people had to call upon the Harlem Globetrotters.
No idea about that. I actually forgot that this was the one that you said, like, oh, they invented this new math thing. And then I was like, oh, Melissa, putting in the episode about the Harlem Globetrotters, knowing
Harlem
that
Globetrotters,
I've been to a Harlem
dancing.
Globetrotters game. Yeah, and I got the 2 cotton candy, right? It's classic Whatnauts lore that Melissa is tipping her hat towards here. But no, that it's actual Futurama craziness.
Yeah, and they've written this whole like set of math on a chalkboard, and you can pause it and look at it, and like that all checks out. Like the writer did all of this math to figure out if you were in this situation, how would you solve it?
Interesting.
And I think that's just tremendous. I don't know what other show can claim to have done this.
And yeah, so essentially it's just an equation or what have you to be like, hey, if you had to keep rotating bodies, what's the exact number of people you would have to make it work? Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Good stuff with that.
We do get a lot of
wild.
We get a lot of body switch fun. Fry and Leela are an item at this point. And the episode starts with her looking at her eye, and she's like, my eye is so round, so hideously round. Fry, would you love me even if I... And he's like, no, it looks fine. And like they have this whole argument with like, do you only like me because I'm attractive? If I let myself go in some way, would you still be with me? And so that culminates with them switching bodies to where she's in the professor and he's in Zoidberg, a very old man and a weird lobster alien. and they like are like playing chicken with each other, like going out on a date, like just being as gross as possible in their respective ways. And then they do end up sleeping with each other in those bodies. And they're like,
Yeah,
that
it's
was
great.
nice. Which is nice to see their relationship tested in so many different wacky sci-fi ways. Like, do these two souls love each other regardless of what forms they are in? It is weird that they are in the forms of their immediate friends, family, and coworkers, but
Yeah, so
it's not the
this
angle here.
is almost the exact same situation as Wonder Woman 84, which I don't
I did
like.
think of that, yes.
Right? It is the exact thing. Like, oh, why they made Wonder Woman rape someone in this? What is happening? That's not Wonder Woman. No, don't do this. Yeah, it's the exact same situation essentially in this. So if you think about it like that, yeah, technically they didn't get consent, all of that stuff. It's not good, but I think the way they frame it in this is a lot better than what they did with Wonder Woman. To be like you said, it is about, do these two souls truly love each other no matter what they look like? And what they did with that arc makes a lot more sense. But yeah, it's still the like, okay, so Zoidberg and the professor had sex. Okay. Huh. Interesting. That's weird.
I feel like this episode would be, it doesn't feel terribly dated, but I feel like it would be written a little bit differently today. The focus on consent is more on like Amy. It starts with Amy and the professor switching bodies because the professor's like, I'm so old, I wish I was young again. And Amy's like, I used to have such a problem eating. Like I would just eat and eat and eat all the time. And I wish I could be in a different body where I feel like I've got more allowance to do that again. And so you see her going through different people and their different relationships with Amy is making me fat now, which is, it's a little touchy, but I can say as a fat person, I did laugh many times. I like when she's just eating a stick of butter and she's like freaking out about how out of control the body switching has become. And she's like, what do I do? Do I eat more butter?
Yeah, like there are some fat jokes in that like you said, I think would be written differently. But I think that it like it's also kind of part of the joke that when she switches with the professor, she tries to eat all of this stuff and realizes she can't, because he's so old that he can't process this stuff.
Yes.
So she now needs to switch with someone else. And so, yeah, she eventually finds her way to Layla and then can finally do it. And she eats all of the stuff and then is this like golem-like creature just hoarding all of the food and butter and just like, what is happening?
Right. She switches with Leela because Leela wants to be the professor as like a test to Fry. Like, not am I in the body of your great times a million
But you still love me boss, if I looked like this.
Right. If I was an old man, let's pretend it's just any old man. Would you still love me? And there's also a joke about how she wants the senior discount at the movies. And she says, I hate having to pay $14 to watch Nicolas Cage solve things.
Right, yeah.
You see her later on the phone like, yeah, and then Nicolas Cage found out that the real treasure all along was family. Yes, I'll hold.
Which that scene in particular reminds me a lot of a scene in the Bear season 2. Without spoiling things, there is a character on the phone just spilling their entire life story, like very like intimate details and stuff. They're emotional. They're inside a bathroom, like heading down by a toilet. Like you think like, oh, this character is in a bad place, and then it's the like, what? Yeah, no, it's just that the water keeps coming up from the bowl here, so you can be here at 6 to fix that, right? Yeah, and it's like you're always spilling your whole life to the plumber. that
right, it's the sir, this is an Arby's of it.
Right, yeah, exactly.
There's another great joke in this episode at the beginning when Amy is talking about how she's tired of having to like feed monkeys or whatever into all their science experiments, and she's ready to try This is your Begin Human Trials. If that's on bingo this year, this is when you cross off Begin Human Trials. She's like, I'm tired of having to deal with heaps of dead monkeys. And the professor says, science cannot move forward without heaps.
Right, yeah. Good stuff.
And then we get the story of Scruffy, the janitor, and he's got this like robotic wash bucket, and like they need to bring another robot in because like the Bender's in Amy's body, and like the bucket. He needs to tell this like robot prince that he can be in the body of another robot.
We haven't even
get back
mentioned
to his own
like
body
the
the
actual
professor's in
plot
it and ran
of
away. Right.
what's happening in
You don't
this
need
episode.
to. And then like so he puts the Robo Prince in like the body of the bucket, and he's like, yes, I'm Bender. And then Zoidberg is in Fry's body, and he's like, yes, I'm Fry. And those two try and go off and live a normal life with each other. But like the soul of the robot bucket gets put in Amy's body. And Amy puts on this lingerie and approaches Scruffy with this blank expression and the stiff robotic pose. It's such funny animation. Everything they do with Amy's figure especially really works in this episode.
It's great.
Like,
yeah.
And then the robot bucket approaches Scruffy and is like, Scruffy, I have always loved you. In this form, we can be together. And Scruffy's like, no, it'd be fun for now, but then I'd always know. And the bucket's like, if we go away to another city, we can be anybody.
Yeah.
Scruffy's like, you leave now before I beg you to stay. And then he like curls up in a ball and cries.
It's so great because the other times that we see him, he's always like laying down on the job, or he just finished doing something. So he's like, I'm on break. And he's always looking at some porn magazine.
Yeah,
of
like zero-G jugs.
Yeah, long boobed something, right? Long boobed aliens or something like that. And
I think one of the magazines is like Asses Monthly.
Sign me up, you know what I mean? but like he's this character who's just kind of there. We don't know much about him, and then in this it just seems like this flood of info of like, oh, there's been this forbidden love. Like deep down, I'll always know that you were just janitorial equipment, right? I can't.
Yes.
No. And it's not what you expect in the midst of the A and B plot that's happening in this. And it's just it felt like we got this little small arc for him. It's like, oh, I'm actually kind of happy that he's expressed his love, but also is like, you know what, that's not the right thing. I have some integrity, right?
Yeah. And that's the benefit of this show going on for so long and like being canceled and being rebooted again is that it seems like the show learns to never really take anything for granted. Like, we can do something with Scruffy the janitor. He never becomes like a full part of the cast. There's not a Scruffy-centric episode, but he will get these little bits like this. There is room for everybody, even in a jokey way, to have an emotional beat. That's such a strength of this show.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's so efficient.
Indeed.
And this takes us to the most recent finale, an episode called Meanwhile. And the equivalent of like the Bart Simpson chalkboard gag from the beginning of like the opening credits to every Simpsons episode where he's always writing something different. And like the big like splash title card for the show Futurama, there's always a message written at the bottom like, Futurama, if you don't watch it, who will?
Someone else
Futurama,
will,
fun for the whole family. Like it's always some sort of a joke. And for this final episode, scrawled in blood, it says, avenge us.
Yeah, it's great.
There's another...
we haven't even mentioned the opening credits of Futurama, because they also do something that I have always thought was neat is that like in the futuristic city there is a TV screen that ends up playing some like old cartoon, and every single episode it is a new cartoon that they show, and they always give credit to like what that cartoon was back in the day, and it's just some neat little bit that they have in there, and just neat.
Yeah, they're just picking some old, like, little, like, 3 seconds of a public domain cartoon to play on a big screen before it flashes. Futurama. Yeah, it's a real look at, like, the history of animation in this animated show that is about the future.
Yeah, neat stuff. But yes, please continue on. Meanwhile,
there's another running joke that this episode does a really great touch on, which is so many episodes feature the professor bursting in to tell the rest of the Planet Express crew, "Good news, everyone! I invented this thing!" And like there's an episode, I think when he comes in and he's talking to somebody else who's in his body in Prisoner of Benda, where he says, "Good news, me!" And in this final episode, he comes out and just says, "GNE!" just abbreviates it. I think that gag is very good.
Yeah, so for this one, he has invented yet another time travel device. This one will only set you back 10 seconds.
And the little clicker needs 10 seconds to recharge itself. So you can't just infinitely go back 10 seconds, 10 seconds, 10 seconds.
But you can relive that same like 10-second loop over and over. And that's it. I like the fact that they've done so many time travel episodes. There's probably more in here, I'm sure. But it at least in the 3 that we saw, each one felt different. It's not like, hey, let's get that one device back out and use that which they might do at some point in there. Again, I haven't seen enough, but it felt like they were trying different things. Which I like when they like give themselves like a set of rules, like, okay, you can only go back 10 seconds. It needs 10 seconds to recharge. So you can't do this. You could do that. Here's the only other thing. There's this like rock-like device that if you get inside, you will be excluded from that 10-second loop, so you can kind of watch what's happening. Like I like that they give themselves parameters of this is how this thing works, and then they go off like, okay, here's now what we do with that. So yeah, and I think this one culminates in Fry trying to ask Layla to marry him. There's some antics that he and Bender get up to with robbing a diamond store, a jewelry store to build this mecha diamond, right? This big like extra thing, which almost looks like the atomic bomb thing that we saw in Oppenheimer, right?
It's made out of all these little like trapezoids. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I like that the episode starts with they return to the site of their first ever delivery, which is a moon theme park called Luna Park, which is like on Coney Island. And like there's an accident and like Leela almost dies, and these paramedics come in and they're like, yeah, Mr. Fry, like your wife, she's in trouble. And he's like, she's not my wife. And like he realizes after this moment of mortal peril, he's like, if you almost die again, I want you to almost die as my wife. Like, I think that's
how romantic.
It's so funny and so sweet that like he wants to be able to say my wife is in trouble. I have to save my wife. I want my wife to be okay.
Aspirational.
So he decides to propose to her. Exactly. He wants to propose to her and use this time device to like loop the time. Like he proposes to her at dinner and then he's like, hold on. I've developed the perfect scenario for where I want to hear you say yes. Meet me here at this time at the top of the tallest building in the city, the Vampire State Building, which is new. That I don't think that's an existing joke building in this series. I think it's for this episode, this preposterously tall building. He's like, meet me there at the top floor at sunset. If you say yes, I want that moment to last forever. And he's been going back in time so much that he doesn't realize that his watch is wrong. Like,
Mhm.
he thinks she didn't come. She doesn't want to marry me. And he's like, I can't live with this anymore. And he jumps off the building. And as he's plummeting to his death, he sees her walk up and he realizes, oh my God, I had the time wrong. She does want to marry me. And so he tries to like reset the button so he can go back to when he's still like on the balcony. But he's been falling for so long. Every time he hits the button, he's
It's
just at a
not
different
enough.
point in his plummet. Right. Like he can never get back to the balcony. I think that's a really interesting challenge of how do you save Fry from this 10-second loop of just falling through the air.
Exactly. I was expecting him to like start to like take off his tie and see if he could
No.
loop that gargoyle that's up there, and then it's not enough, so he has to take off his shirt and do it, and it's not enough, and he has to like I was expecting him to be like completely naked, like trying to loop himself onto this gargoyle. But no, he is just kind of at the mercy of this loop here. And eventually it's the professor realizes that the world is stuck in this time loop here. And so he gets everyone into the little like rock
Right.
looking hut, and they just like 10 seconds at a time have to
Yes.
like walk. All right, stop. All right, walk. All right, stop.
It
All right, walk.
reminds me of Toy Story 2, where the toys
Yeah.
have to fit inside like a fast food trash and like scuttle across the road to get to Al's
Exactly.
toy barn. It's
Exactly.
that energy.
It is that exactly. And they make it to the tower, but once the professor steps out and Fry sees him, he ends up dropping the device. And so Fry just falls and splats and is just this giant puddle of pudding.
Very gross.
Yeah, it is disgusting. And they end up you end up seeing him splat like 5 or 6 times as they try and do other stuff. Like, okay, well, if we all we could use Bender's air bag to save it, like all of this stuff to see if they can make it work. And eventually it gets to a point where they've basically saved him, but Harai lands on the device, destroying it, and that sends out this one last kind of shock wave that freezes the whole earth except for him and Layla. So they truly are in this moment forever.
Yes.
And they just kind of think, well, this is it. Like, we don't know how to fix this device, so I guess we just have our really long honeymoon by ourselves, right? And it's lonely, it's scary, it's kind of creepy, but they make the most of it. They go to the beach, they play frisbee with a dog that's still attached to the frisbee. They do all sorts of stuff and go on adventures, and they have a blast. They live a great life. And then I guess the day is finally saved at the end here, because the professor did step out of the rock thing when something happened. So he's lost in some time continuum, finally makes it out, fixes the device, and sends everyone back to where they were. So that's kind of that one there.
This episode, I think, is such a remarkable example of a series finale in that it narrows down to just the relationship between two people in this very quiet, intimate way.
Yeah.
Like, this is the one relationship that needs a final touch. We don't have a final thing we have to do with Bender or Hermes or anybody else, but like, we need a final story for Fry and Leela. That is the heart of the show. And it's just the two of them in this, just walking around the earth together, like just hand in hand. They go backpacking across this entirely still earth where like there's no elements anymore. They walk across oceans
Yeah.
together. Everything is frozen, and it's so. I remembered this episode, that being the whole episode, and I was surprised that I went back and it's only a couple minutes towards the end. Like,
Mm-hmm.
this is such a striking scenario. It really takes over your brain as being the entirety of the thing. It looms so large. You're like, that must have been 15 straight minutes when it was only like 3.
Yeah.
And like when they're so old, they
That moment
climb back up to
lasted
the top of
forever.
the Vampire State Building to like drink the champagne that Fry poured however many decades ago. And they're talking about how they are happy that with the life they were able to make in this frozen universe, it's just the two of them. Fry's like, "Were you ever lonely?" And Leela says, "I was never lonely, not even for a minute." Which is such a, to go from like the first episode that we watched, Parasites
Mm-hmm.
Lost, where he has to do so much to like impress her, to she's gotten to the point where she doesn't need a single thing in the universe that isn't him. It's
Yeah.
of course you can't imagine. She would miss her
Incredible.
parents. She would miss her beloved pet Nibbler. She would miss ever. There would be a longing for the friendship that you had, but zeroing in on just these two, and that only these two needing only each other. It's such a nice choice. It's so effective. I think this was a really beautiful ending, and if the show never came back, this would be a perfectly fine final note to the thing.
Yeah.
But like every time they've had to do a finale, it's a good finale. Like the final episode of the Fox run, the final one of those like interim DVD movies, this final episode, like it's always solid. They always like can find another appropriate ending every time they are given the chance to do so.
Yeah. That's good stuff. That's I
Mhm.
feel like it's difficult to do as well. You would think at some point whatever they tried to do would be like, it wasn't as good as the other one, or who knows. But yeah, it feels like they progress things enough in every relaunch of the show that they
Yeah.
have something else to work with, and like, this is the one thing that like will be most effective.
Mhm.
So good on them. Good stuff.
Mhm.
Welcome back, Futurama.
Yes. Welcome to this world of tomorrow.
Indeed. Yeah, that one, I think that last one was my favorite of the bunch.
It's so deeply romantic. It's so special. And I know I've
The
mentioned it before, not to
Mhm.
talk too much in detail about this thing, but I recommended it based off of the series finale of The Leftovers. So I did want us to watch it because I know I have told you about it.
Yeah. The last thing I will say kind of about Futurama here is yeah, I think it is a show that, because it's set in the future, is kind of and can be speculative and stuff like that. It has
Mhm.
that sci-fi, like, we can do these things like one step removed and have better lessons and stuff like that. Whereas, I mean, this is not why I did not like The Simpsons, and I don't think saying I didn't like The Simpsons is not, but like why I liked Futurama better is, like, I felt The Simpsons was too close. It didn't feel like an escape. It just felt like, oh yeah, those are my neighbors next door. And this is like, I can see myself reflected in some of these characters and the situations they get in, but it's not me. And so, yeah, they can have these interesting problems and issues and go about it in certain ways that like make me think and stuff like that, all in the 22-minute situational comedy.
Yeah.
So
I think
good on them.
it
It's a good
truly
show.
does make the most of it being a speculative show that can play with these massive amounts of time. Like The
Mhm.
Simpsons could never do an episode quite like The Luck of the Fryish.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, cool. I think that's all I have to say on Futurama. So let me see here. I am
Yes.
going to pull up our bingo sheet to see if we have any updates on that. Let's see. I'll bring this up on screen here. Okay, we're looking for treasure map, big puddle splash, a mocap character, no time for breakfast, a sex scene set to music, cat and mouse game, locked room mystery, didn't realize my own strength, arted to death, feeling with a pet, conspiracy board. I don't
feel
know.
like and we don't. One of the things you have to cross off is spaceship AI. We don't really have that. That's like the one thing the Planet Express ship doesn't have. It doesn't have its own
AI,
personality.
like built
Maybe it
in,
will.
yeah.
Or maybe it did
Who
for like
knows, yeah.
one episode that I don't remember specifically.
And everything went wrong. Bum, bum, bum. And then Tom Cruise came and punched it, and it was dead. Okay, well, yeah, not much of an update again for bingo, but that's okay. It does get more and more difficult to cross off squares as we don't have very many left. So there you go. Melissa, recommendations for people that enjoy Futurama. What else might they like?
Of course, there is The Simpsons. And I want to mention that we did a special episode 121, summer of 2020. Well, it's September. I guess we were out of summer then. You and I did a sitcom trade, the first of our sitcom trades, which this episode has been a variation of. You gave me 3 episodes of Seinfeld, a show you grew up loving, but I barely knew. And I gave you 3 episodes of Simpsons, a show I grew up with and you don't know. So that was a fun trade. We did that again with Community and Arrested Development. And with this, it's not a trade. I just gave you 7 episodes of Futurama to watch for your own enlightenment.
I feel enlightened, indeed.
Also in 2020, we did 3 episodes talking about the entirety of the Venture Brothers, another personal favorite of mine, an Adult Swim animated show about a super scientist father who was once a boy adventurer dragging his own twin teenage sons on a series of cartoonish adventures across the globe, fighting different supervillains, dealing with the sins of the past of the Venture family, and trying to learn to grow and be their own people. The show lasted 7 seasons and was supposed to get an 8th season, but instead they got this finale movie, which is I think I mentioned at the beginning, you can catch on VOD now, or by the time this episode is released, you can buy on physical media. There's a very short time span between it coming out digitally and then physically. It's very nice. You can own this disc. You can go out, you can buy it. And then I believe later it will come to Max as part of their Adult Swim collection. Venture Brothers is another show that is a very successful comedy that's also secretly very emotional, with like really great continuity. I just watched this finale movie and there are like really specific hits from the past that like come back in that story in different ways. That one's very fun. Lots of good genre takes. It's not quite as hard sci-fi. Neither of those guys who write the show went to Harvard, so you're not getting quite that much. And then finally, a show that I think is spiritually a very good match for Futurama is Fringe. Last year, we also did one of our monthly ongoing series on Fringe. We watched all 5 seasons of that show, which is about the FBI's Fringe division that take on weird sort of metaphysical pseudoscience cases. And it's led by this FBI agent and this sort of addled old scientist and his son, who is like the only person who can kind of get through to him. And they just make this weird little family unit, like the 3 of them. their wonderful lab assistant Astrid, a cow, Jean the
Yeah.
cow, other FBI agents. Like it's a sort of motley mix of old man scientist, estranged family relation who's got a romance with this very tough leader of the team and various other associates. And they just form this really tight bond. Fringe is a procedural drama, but it does have a good amount of comedy episodes. Like there's one episode that is a musical. There's one episode that
Is a
they go
drug
inside
trip.
somebody's right. There's drug trip episodes. There's an episode where they go inside somebody's mind and it's all a cartoon. Like
Yeah.
they really experiment with the format and tone of that show as much as they experiment with anything else.
Yeah, indeed. Um, yeah, of course we can always second the Simpsons. There is if you want, I guess, a different flavor of, if you don't want the Simpsons and you don't want sci-fi, there's Enchanted. The other,
Yes.
I think it's on Netflix. I was not a huge fan of that one personally, but that is another cartoon by I can never
Matt
say his
Groening.
last name. Yeah, I always want to say Matt Groening, but it's Groening, right? You just
Groening.
yeah. Yeah, it's another cartoon by him. I'm always a big fan of Bob's Burgers. I know that's not the sci-fi
Yes.
stuff, but they do get up to some interesting antics in that show. You already mentioned Community, that we did a sitcom exchange on that.
Yeah.
I think Community is a great match for this show, even though it is less sci-fi on its appearance. Like, it appears to be less sci-fi. They do so much just like weird one-off episodes where, like, oh, they're playing Dungeons and Dragons and then the whole thing turns into this, or it's a Christmas episode and they're all claymation, or it is it's a show that is so smartly written. They have jokes that last over multiple seasons and don't pay off until like down the road. Like they have in the first like handful of seasons, they have someone mention the name Beetlejuice once, and then in the next season they mention it once, and in the third season they mention it once. But on that third time, when they mention it, in the background there is a guy in a Beetlejuice costume that walks by. That if you aren't looking, you just don't know. But if you know, it's like, and over 3 seasons.
Yes.
This is amazing. But yeah, same kind of weird time travel, weird lore that if you just didn't know or understand, you'd just be like, what is happening in this show? So yeah, I would recommend that. Another anime that I have mentioned a number of times here on the review show is Nichijou. It is much more a slice of life story, but it is hilarious. You see a number of groups of different people throughout this city, and just kind of the mundane yet absurd stuff that happens to them. And some of these skits are like they take the mundane stuff and just heighten it so much. For example, there's a skit where one of the characters wants to start drinking coffee, so they go to a coffee shop, but they've never been to a coffee shop before, and so they don't know how to order. They don't know what any of the sizes are, and just like the anxiety of trying to figure out, they're like, I want a medium. It's like, we don't have medium. We have like venti or something, right? And it's just like, I don't know what that means. They're just like, so yeah, there is some sci-fi stuff that happens in that too, but it's just kind of chaos. But I would recommend that as like an oddball fit in with that. Yes, you were about
Speaking of which, there is an episode of Futurama called 300 Big Boys where everybody gets a $300 tax refund from something. The
Mhm.
episode's just about how everybody spends that $300 in various disastrous ways. And
Amazing.
Fry decides to buy 300 $1 cups of coffee. And he drinks so much coffee. And I think there's like a counter in the corner of the screen by
I
how
feel
many
like I've
cups
seen
he's
a
had.
gif from that
Yes.
episode. Is that one where he has like he's face down on the table with the cup of coffee?
I think so.
Something
But
like
at the
that.
end, he
I don't
drinks
know.
so many cups. The 300th cup of coffee sends him into another plane of existence. He ascends.
Amazing.
He is glowing.
Amazing.
He
Yeah.
is powerful now. He has like Speed Force powers.
Great. Love it. Good stuff. I think that's our recommendations for if you like Futurama. But yeah, for next week, we've already kind of mentioned
Yeah.
it. We will be concluding our coverage of The Good Place. We will be watching season 4 of The Good Place and talking about that, which is exciting. For the past couple months, we've been watching that show, and now we get to see how it all ends.
Yes.
So yeah, that'll be exciting. Melissa, if you want, I have my pitches for the week after that. If you're ready,
I would like to have those. Yes, I would.
Yeah,
I'd love
absolutely.
to be prepared. Thank you.
Indeed. So yeah, I wanted to go back and do like childhood IPs, like stuff that was popular when we were kids. And to read or watch or all of that stuff, just to like, is there a different iteration of those IPs that we have not dived into yet? So I have some comics for us to pick out. Pitch number 1 is the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. I think I'm double check my notes here. I think yes. So I wanted to pitch the first 3 volumes of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers by Kyle Higgins, published on Boom Studios. This is available on Comixology Unlimited. And there's a number of other people who worked on this book, including Steve Orlando, Margaret Scott, Henry Persietta, Corin Howell, Daniel Bayless. It seems like they had a number of people just like work on the art and the story of all of this here. But the first 3 volumes, I will read the description for volume 1. It says, after escaping Rita Repulsa's mind control, Tommy Oliver, the Green Ranger, joins the Power Rangers to combat the onslaught of evil attacks plaguing Angel Grove. Any semblance of a normal life is gone for Tommy now. But with his newfound family, there lies hope for a brighter path. Yeah, I have heard nothing but great things about Boom Studios' run on Power Rangers. These first couple volumes come, I think, just before their first like big event crossover book that they did. They had a number of Power Rangers stories being told. They had this series. I think they eventually had one that was called Go-Go Power Rangers, and then I think they did a few like solo books, like here's one for the Pink Ranger and stuff
I heard that
like
one's
that.
Good.
But yeah, I thought we could at least get started with these first 3 volumes, which collects the first 12 issues.
Okay.
So I figured that would be a good quick read for us to explore, and like I said, all on Comixology Unlimited. But yeah, Power Rangers as you know them and love them, but new stories. So that's pitch number 1. Pitch number 2. Let me see if I can pull up the details on this guy. This is also available on Comixology Unlimited. This is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. We are gonna go back to the originals. The original Eastman and Laird comics. Let me look at my notes again here to see which one. So the Ultimate Collection, they have an Ultimate Black and White collection because the originals actually did not have color. From what I understand, you did not get to understand that Donatello had the purple bandana until later on. I'm wondering now if that was a result of the cartoon, like to like make it easier for people to, who knows, we'll figure all that stuff out down the road. But the Ultimate Collection volumes 1 and 2 cover the first 11 issues, and I think there might be some ancillary material in these here. But it says, rediscover the underground roots of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, starting with this special edition. The first volume collects issues 1 through 7, along with a Raphael one-shot by creators Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird. So again, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, as you know them and love them. I've never gone back and read the originals. I have not read any kind of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comics. I know they have newer stuff that I think was published by IDW that has also been like, they've done good stories. I think more recently there's been a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comic called The Last Ronin, which has been pretty popular, that I think takes place in the future, and there's like only one of them left, and it's this like post-apocalyptic samurai story, right? I think that's getting turned into a video game, if I'm not mistaken, but they've had a rich history in comics, both in the past and present. So yeah, they have the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the Ultimate Black and White Collection, Volume 1 and 2. That is pitch number 2. And then for pitch number 3, this is not a specific IP. It is not like the Power Rangers or Ninja Turtles. This book is entitled Future Quest. This is along, we went back and we read the Flintstones comics at JC. This is basically what if Hanna-Barbera characters, but the Avengers. It says, when the adventurous and inquisitive Johnny Quest and his adoptive brother Haji make a startling discovery in the swamp lands of Florida, they are pulled into an epic struggle between the Space Rangers and a dangerous villain who threatens the galaxy. Now, it's up to the combined forces of Johnny Quest, Space Ghost, the Herculoids, Birdman, Frankenstein Jr., the Impossibles, and the Galaxy Trio and Mitor to stop the villain and save their universe. So yeah, just a big collection of Hanna-Barbera characters saving the universe here. There are only 2 volumes of this. We will have to purchase these if we decide to do these, but we can buy them on Comixology. And yeah, like I said, only 2 volumes of this, which is also about 12 issues. So I thought my childhood was all like Power Rangers and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and cartoons like Scooby-Doo and the Flintstones and Johnny Quest and Space Ghost. So why not revisit all of that stuff in a different medium? So yeah,
very nice series of pitches.
Volumes 1 through 3 of the Power Rangers. Pitch number 2, the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles by Eastman and Laird. And pitch number 3, Future Quest, a much more modern take on characters that we know and love from Hanna-Barbera. That we saw all the time on Boomerang and Cartoon Network and all that good stuff.
Yes. I know so little about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I respect the desire to go back to the original stuff, but I feel like the original stuff is not what most people know. So I don't know if that's going to be super helpful to me in evening out my TMNT knowledge with that of the average citizen. I am fascinated by Future Quest. I would really like to do this, but considering that we were recently in the Hanna-Barbera space with the Flintstones comics, let's shelve this. Let's do this like next year. I would really like to read these.
Absolutely.
Especially after the conclusion of Venture Brothers. I will take anything Venture-esque, and I will take a Johnny Quest story.
Yeah.
I have heard great things about those Power Rangers comics. I think I pitched you maybe the Pink Ranger solo series before. I would like to read these. Let's go. Let's go Power Rangers.
Power Rangers. Yeah, indeed.
Are Bulk and Skull in these? Bulk and Skull were my favorite part.
I would assume so, that they are in there.
Good.
I've heard that like what you remember from like the original show, it is exactly that. They nailed characters. It's still all of that, but yet they have found a way to kind of progress that story. I don't want to say mature it, but like find new things about the character. Because that was kind of the thing about that show, is it's kind of so flat, but we still loved it, right? Like there's not much to those like we discussed. It's that like Superman, like they have to kind of stay in this one spot forever, right? But yeah, they have found interesting new paths to continue down with Power Rangers. So yeah, that is what we will do in 2 weeks' time. Then, like we said, they are available on Comixology Unlimited. If you are a subscriber to that, you can go ahead and read all of those. Yeah, next week, The Good Place, season 4 is what we'll be up to. So yeah, I think that about wraps us up for this week's podcast. We've been talking for quite a while.
Yes.
Melissa, where can the people find you on the internet?
You can find me on the Twitter and Instagram that I still have, even though I don't really update, at Wilkywit, WILKYWIT, and listen to my other podcast, Saturday Morning Obscurities.
There you go. You guys can find me at Yo Kyle Springer on Twitter and Threads. And if you'd like to stay up to date with all of the stuff that we do here at the Whatnauts, we are at the Whatnauts on Twitter and at the Whatnauts official on Threads. So please go like, share, and subscribe. You guys know the deal with that. We got plenty more videos for you to check out. If you're watching this on YouTube, we got some more right over there. But yeah. This has been number, I don't remember the number again, but yeah, we will
263
see you all next time.